Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Time Traveler's Handbook. We're continuing on a discussion of the first season of Doctor Who with the episode Father's Day. It is the 8th episode of the first season, so spoilers ahead for Father's Day. Rose realizes with the power of the TARDIS that they could go back in time and see someone who is dead. Specifically, Rose wants to see her father, who died in a car crash on the day of a wedding. When they go to see her father, they watch from a distance and they watch as he gets hit by a car and dies. Rose is uncertain about this event, and she feels like there should be someone there when he dies to comfort him, to just be there, but he died alone. And that's a very fixed moment in the past. So the Doctor's objecting to it, but he takes her anyways. And when they go there, they see the past version of themselves watching the event unfold. And Rose cannot help herself. She rushes forward to save her father from death. This causes the previous versions of themselves to disappear, and a paradox has started. Her father should not be alive. He should have been killed by that car, and everything around them kind of starts to collapse. There are creatures called Reapers that appear that consume people that are affected by a paradox. Time is wounded and it's dangerous when a paradox happens, and these creatures are just exploiting that. They aren't caused by the paradox, but they can get in because of the paradox. They're from another dimension. But really, all of time around them is collapsing. This is actually a rare moment in Doctor Who where the story is rather complex. It's taking you on an alternate path through the timeline, and they have to find a way to get back. So essentially, at the moment that she messes up, she saves her father, that splits the timeline into an alternate timeline that is affected by this paradox. And the paradox won't be resolved until everyone within it is dead, or they resolve the issue of Rose's father being alive. One interesting thing that they do about this episode is that the TARDIS becomes an empty shell when the paradox begins. The TARDIS, being a pocket dimension as discussed before, is connected to the blue box in kind of an inseparable way as long as you are connected to the same universe. Now, when they cause the paradox, they're outside of the TARDIS, which means the TARDIS and its shell are basically ripped apart into two different timelines. And that is essentially what happens to the TARDIS. That is why they can't access it and just fly away from there. It's because they no longer exist in the same universe. And the TARDIS couldn't exist in the same universe as a paradox, which means they have to solve it in another way. However, in the middle of the episode, the Doctor does attempt to get the TARDIS into that universe, tries to pull it over. It's a long process, and it ultimately results in failure when the Doctor is unable to stay alive for that episode and is consumed by the Reapers. So I think that is one interesting thing that we can take away from this, is that you can have sort of a connection with pocket dimensions and the normal universe, and you lose access to those pocket dimensions if you ever go to another universe. And that's essentially what this paradox universe is. It's just an alternate universe that they've found themselves trapped in. Now, the method to restoring the timeline, restoring the universe back to the original universe, is for Rose's father to die, which must always happen and is thus a fixed event, like we talked about in the previous episode with fatalism and things that have to happen. This could be considered a fixed event for many reasons, but I theorize that it's only a fixed event because she didn't get it the first time around and had to go back and fix it. And thus, there are two versions of these time-traveling selves, where one sees Rose's father die and one sees Rose's father live. And that's where the paradox really is. If Rose had rushed out there and saved her father beforehand, I'm not entirely certain that this would have been a fixed event. But when time traveling, you have to be careful about such things, otherwise you're going to cause fixed events to happen. This is, of course, unless the entire timeline is changed to another timeline from events that are changed in the past of that. Then when you get to that point, things could be entirely different anyways. But in this case, if she would have jumped out there on the first attempt rather than the second, I'm pretty sure it wouldn't have been as drastic as it was. Now, this universe does seem to know that the solution to the problem is for Pete, Rose's father, to jump in front of the moving car and die. The car continues to come back, looping itself on the same moment, and thus you can kind of see that the paradox isn't moving forward in time, it's just kind of a self-contained loop of itself over and over again until they fix it. And that's the rule for this paradox universe. It doesn't follow the normal conventions that the primary universe follows. I think this is probably the most interesting episode in the season. As far as time travel content goes, there are a lot of interesting things that this season does, especially with the empty child and the doctor dances. That's a really good monster story. And with all of the references to Bad Wolf, how they reintroduce the Daleks, I really love a lot of the things in season 1. But as far as time travel content goes and coming away with something interesting from the show, Father's Day takes the cake for me. In the next episode, I will be talking about the finale of season 1, The Parting of the Ways. Tune in next time, and as always, thank you for listening.